Hi everybody, welcome back to Foster Swift's podcast, Businesswomen Talking, a podcast where we hope to dive into the stories, insights, and experiences that shape the world of businesswomen today. I'm one of your co-hosts, Lindsey Mead.
And I'm Amanda Dernovshek. We're excited to have you here today for our next episode of Businesswomen Talking. And today we're joined by a special guest, Abby Burnell.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you, Abby. We're going to start off the episode with kind of giving people some background into your bio and resume, and then we'll dive into questions. So we'll start there. But Abby is a governmental affairs consultant at McCall Hamilton, which is an all-female lobbying firm here in Lansing, named in honor of Eva McCall Hamilton, who was a trailblazer of Michigan legislative history. McCall Hamilton is a full-service, bipartisan government affairs firm that focuses on local, state, and federal government activities in a variety of fields, which include health, education, housing, and human services. Abby's path into government affairs was fueled by her passion for public health, which started at a young age and kind of came out of aspirations for direct patient care. And this led to policy work that keeps patient care at its heart, which is super cool. And her career spans impactful roles with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, where she first learned the vital role of healthcare regulation and policy. And there she did a lot of certificate of need work, which you continue to do today, but from a different perspective.
Yeah, so in addition to your work at McCall Hamilton, Abby serves as a key player in most certificate of need policy discussions that are happening, and she's one of the very few experts in that field. She regularly participates in the state's ongoing Standard Advisory Committee and work group processes, and is currently diving into Michigan rural health designations. Abby's involved in both local and state and national organizations, and is currently part of the Capital Area Women Who Care, and is just about finished with a leadership training through Athena Win. So, Abby's done a lot, and that's all of her professional and community involvement. In addition to that, though, she has a husband and a beautiful 2-year-old daughter, and then a golden retriever named Garth. And Abby loves to do things in the outdoors, like hiking and pretty much anything outdoors and on MSU campus. And then in your free time, you mentioned that you do flower arranging too, which is cool.
I try to, yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's really special to be able to get together with other women and share our experiences, even if we're in different industries. I find that we have a lot of shared experiences, and it's so helpful to talk about those and bring more people into the professional realm.
Yeah. We'll dive right into questions then, Abby. If we're curious, just kind of kick it off. What really drove your career path into healthcare regulation and policy?
Super untraditional, and that's how I think a lot of things end up. I knew I was always really interested in healthcare and access to healthcare, and growing up I thought the only avenue into that was direct patient care, being a doctor or a nurse or a physician's assistant. And when I was in college at MSU, I was preparing to apply to PA schools for a physician assistant program, and as a part of that you have to do what they call contact hours, like either volunteer contact hours through a hospital or another way to get patient care. And there was a woman in East Lansing, and I believe she still lives in East Lansing, and she was diagnosed with a condition called spinal muscular atrophy. And I would visit her home in the morning from like 7 to 9 and get her up out of her bed. She only had some mobility from elbows down and waist up. And so we would get her up out of her bed, get her in her wheelchair, get her showered. We would help prep her meals for the day and make sure all the food was at the edge of the counter so that she could access it throughout the day. But it was really important for her to stay in her home. She didn't want to go into a facility. She was very important for her to stay within her home. And then I did the same thing at night. I would go as a college student and tuck her in her bed at night and would do it again the next day. And so I learned through that work the importance of the different programs that she depended on to be able to stay in her home. And one time on my pay stub, I was looking and I noticed that she was manipulating the hours. So the state, through one of their programs, allotted her a number of hours of care or help a day, depending on her condition. And to get people that she thought were reliable, would regularly come and take care of her, that she could depend on, she would manipulate hours to be able to pay us more money so that we would be able to come and provide that care for her. And so it was the first time that I really saw the perspective of how much these services are needed in our community, and that there's a different avenue to patient care and healthcare access that is separate from just direct patient care in the hospital, and that there are these programs, these services that people depend on to be able to do things like stay in their home and have long-lasting, successful complications and other things that they deal with throughout their life. And so it's what brought me to work for MDHHS and learn about the different programs that MDHHS offers, and has propelled my career from there. But I have a bachelor's of science, and so I always say that I don't belong in this world of political healthcare, because I don't have the traditional degree that most people in the industry have.
Yeah, so something you're mentioning there and that I'm picking up on, I think Lindsey and I experienced too, where the laws are set up a certain way, but it's sometimes disconnected from the actual perspective of people that are trying to utilize those things, which can create a lot of frustration and confusion. And we assist clients with similar situations, not in the healthcare context, but from a different perspective. So I think it's interesting that was kind of what was happening there with that experience, and it led you into your DHHS job and then to where you are now. But I'm just curious about how you navigate the complexities of all of that, and especially now there's a lot of political activity, things are changing quick and fast. I'm certain the healthcare industry is impacted by that. So how are you managing that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, we have developed somewhat of a focus, and being a smaller firm in Lansing, we dedicate most of our time directly to healthcare, which allows us to kind of dive in and become subject matter experts specifically on the thing that we do. Instead of trying to do all types of policy, we focus in really on healthcare access and specifically patient advocacy issues.
Okay.
We don't currently represent any insurance companies. We focus mostly on provider and patient access issues. And so we've kind of honed that expertise, and then we find that things relay from one client to another, which can make things easier. But navigating the ever-changing environment is very interesting. Just, we're in March, and so just a few months ago, we had the Dems had control of our bicameral legislature and the executive branch, and that was the first time that had happened in 40 years in Michigan. And so we had this opportunity that we haven't had in 40 years to do types of legislation that they would be supportive of. We now have a split legislature where our Senate is Democrat majority and our House is Republican majority, and we have a Democrat administration, and so we have the split legislature, which you think then maybe nothing would happen, but that's also not true. There are new opportunities to do things that I like to say weren't quite sexy enough to get the attention in a different kind of environment. Things that might be more bipartisan, or some things that we might have considered low-hanging fruit but didn't get the attention that they might have needed in a more politicized environment. And so we're still able to find common ground and work on issues and do a lot of education. It just kind of changes what we do based on the environment that we're in.
Okay. So you shared with us too, Abby, that your passions kind of intersect in a bunch of different industries. It can be environmental conservation, or you had shared with us cancer prevention is something really important to you. How do you see that being an opportunity for you in this current role at McCall Hamilton? How are you able to intersect those passions with what your current work life looks like?
Yeah, great question. I have the pleasure of working with some really amazing clients that the firm has had for a number of years. We represent a lot of provider groups and facilities that are leading a lot of these charges in cancer prevention and preventative diseases and other things like that. And so I get excited about their initiatives, which helps me, be excited about my work. We don't have a lot right now in environmental conservation. That's kind of a personal passion of mine. We try to stick to that niche of healthcare. That's a whole nother area, but we represent the Michigan Society for Hematology and Oncology, and we worked with them on some cancer legislation that was very important to me personally. And so I was excited to do the work because personally it was really important to me as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. So how do you think that you can like assist with promoting access to healthcare through the work that you do? I know that you're working like on legislation, trying to find common ground, and you've mentioned like access to healthcare is kind of at the heart of that. So how does that, like, tell me more about that. How do those things come together to fulfill that goal that you have personally, and I think that McCall Hamilton has as an organization?
Yeah, there are a lot of keywords that have come up specifically like in the last 5 to 10 years, and we hear now a lot about social determinants of health, which like was not a buzz phrase even when I was in college, but we knew kind of the concept of it, didn't have the label of social determinants of health that it did today. And the key to creating good health policy that's going to help people is inviting people that are unlike you to come and fostering collaboration together. And so bringing together people that don't have shared experiences, someone that represents the disability community, someone that represents the cancer community, someone that is on Medicaid or traditional insurance, bringing those people together so that you're able to identify your privilege and your bias and get a bunch of different perspectives. That's mainly what advocacy is storytelling. And getting the real life experiences out of people so that we can see where the roadblocks are, where the things that are challenging, the hoops that people jump through, like the lady that I worked for in East Lansing, that just don't make sense, that make people's day-to-day challenging. Those are the barriers that we're trying to bring down. And we can only do that if we hear real life examples and stories from real people. There's a local woman, she's one of my healthcare heroes. Her name is Dr. Renee Kennedy Branch. She is the CEO of MIHP. And she wrote a book called Room at the Table about health equity and access and justice, and the concept really let's bring people all together. Let's make room at the table for all of the conversations to be had and invite people into the conversation, because if we're all alike and we're having a conversation, we're going to find agreements and make decisions much faster than if we invite people that are unlike us into the conversation. It's really important.
Knowing that like healthcare equity is at the forefront, it's sounding like of your business and also your individual passions and pursuits. Can you share with us a time where you felt like you really made a difference with policy or regulation that you got to be a part of or had your hands on? Like, what is a success story that you'd share?
Yeah, I have a few. One, I'll go back to kind of that cancer thing that I was alluding to before. For close to 10 years, our firm worked on some legislation to create parity between the cost of IV chemo medication and oral chemo medication. So chemo medication that you receive through an IV for cancer treatment, or now through advancements in technology, there are oral medications, pills that you can take home to treat your cancer. One is run through your medical insurance, and one is run through your prescription insurance. And they were vastly different in costs. It was personally important to me because my father was diagnosed with advanced castrate-resistant prostate cancer and was prescribed an oral chemo medication. And my parents had good insurance, they had good savings, and even after all of that, the medical rebates, the things through the pharmaceutical companies, a 30-day subscription was still $3,000 for oral chemo medication. My parents were entering retirement, they were getting ready to do it for like the long haul, and unfortunately my father passed away only a month later. But knowing that burden would be on families, that's something that they would have to carry long term to be able to support their recovery, was really hard for me. And it was a hard pill to swallow, because you know that if there was it's the best kind of treatment for your type of cancer, and just because it has to be in the form of a pill instead of the form of an IV, the cost shouldn't be that drastically different. And so we worked on legislation for close to 10 years to create parity between those two types of treatments, and we were successful in this last legislative cycle, which was really important to us.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that really is. Thank you for sharing your personal story too. And I think like it's much more fulfilling to do your job when you have a personal connection to it and it fuels your fire, even on the days that it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got to do this because this matters. That kind of leads me to my next question though, which is, you know, every day you're working towards making changes that are going to impact a lot of people, especially when you get that win at the end and it's passed by the legislatures. How do you manage knowing that your work impacts a bunch of people?
Yeah. Try not to burden it
Yeah.
on your shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, for even in that example, we worked on it for 10 years. And so there were 9 years of losses before there was that 1 year of a victory. And we continued to do the education. Advocacy is hard because at a certain point, it's out of your control. You do the education, you bring the stories, you give the examples, you try to meet with the legislature and the other stakeholders and explain to them why this is a good thing or why it's needed. But I don't get a vote on the board at the Capitol. I don't get to sign my name onto the law. And so at a certain point, it's out of your control. And all you can do is do your best to be prepared and bring in the people that you think are influential and important to be a part of the conversation. And I like to support common sense policy, and I think the things that we work on are common sense policies, but you have to just do your best to try to not leave any stone unturned, but at the end of the day, know that you're turning it over to someone else.
Yep.
Yeah. You had mentioned, Abby, that your path to get here was maybe less traditional than some other folks who may be in a niche industry like this. Like having the Bachelor of Science background is not what most people who say they want to be in this space would have pursued, like in their undergraduate studies. So I'm curious if you felt like that provided an advantage, or if you would give advice to some 17-year-old or 18-year-old woman, girl that's thinking about starting down a path that's similar to yours. What would you recommend as that path forward? Did you like your non-traditional path? Do you wish you would have gone and done something different? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think knowing what is important to you will lead you in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
I even though I ended up somewhere different than I thought I would in healthcare, I'm still doing the thing that I thought was really important, which was making sure people had access to healthcare. Whether that was me as a physician assistant getting a vaccine or making sure that vaccines are available to children.
Right.
To me, it's fulfilling the same thing, it's just in a different way. So I think identifying those things that really drive you, your core values that are really important to you, and then diving in, reading about those types of things, finding local healthcare heroes like Dr. Renee Branch Kennedy and connecting with them, and finding firms like ours that are all women and women leaders in this space that you can find a mentor or something like that.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of mentors in my career already and hope to be able to mentor others in the future, and it's important that we are able to hand down that opportunity to the next generation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we mentioned at the very beginning that you do fun things outside of work too. So I'm just wondering how you balance your work life and your outside of work life.
Yeah, I am really fortunate to work at a firm that values a work-life balance, so much so that they beg me to bring my daughter in, even on days that she's supposed to be at daycare. And so I'm very fortunate in that way that I work at a place that values that time away from the office, but we love to be outside in nature, which is where that love for the outdoors comes from. We like to do hiking. We love to go to the local Lake Lansing North.
Yeah.
And hike around there. The 2-year-old is not the biggest fan of the hiking backpack at the present moment, though. She wants to walk by myself.
Oh, yes.
But we do our best and like to, when we can, get outside, stretch our legs, do stuff in our garden. We're growing seeds right now, which is our big
Spring project.
Our big spring project. Yeah, we're going to try to make one of those teepees where you take like sticks and form a teepee.
Okay, and it grows up.
It grows up and creates like a little house.
Oh, that's cool.
That's the concept. By the end of the summer, we're supposed to have a little.
We'll see if you
a
have
little
a
house.
Yeah.
Check back in.
Okay,
I
will
love
do.
that, though. And I do feel like we focused a lot on this episode about your work because it is so cool to us, and I really love the idea that you're making change in a way that is different than I think a lot of people think about when they're thinking, I'm interested in the healthcare field, I have to be the hands-on person providing like direct patient care. I love that you thought that as well and realized there's another avenue. But I'm curious too about you enjoying hiking, spending time with your family. Is there resources or books or podcasts, things you'd recommend to other people that keep you kind of inspired in both?
Yeah, I think for work, there is a book called Helping the Good Do Better by Thomas Sheridan, and he talks about how nonprofits can work through advocacy and create change. It can be hard when you're doing advocacy with limited resources, and he talks about it in the Washington D.C. perspective. And so I think if someone is interested in this space, especially for nonprofit work like that, that's really a good resource. Mandy mentioned that I am doing a leadership course right now through Athena, and I like to always try to, do some of that. And I read a book a few years ago called The Confidence Code by Katie Kay and Claire Shipman, and I would recommend that book to every 20-something woman. It talks about how, as women in business, and you guys know too, is a lot of male-dominant careers. It can be hard to find your voice in the conference room or, in other avenues when you have good ideas and they need to be heard. And sometimes just taking that leap and finding the internal confidence to do so is really important. And so I would recommend Confidence Code to any 20-year-old entering the workforce. And then there is a free podcast by MERS, which is a local publication. It's the MERS Monday podcast, so if you're wanting to stay up on local politics, it's a free way every Monday. Hear about what's going on downtown and then just keep yourself in the loop. But otherwise, personally, I'm reading a lot of like Dr. Becky and Bear Can't Sleep right now.
We love that too.
Yes, you need some variety.
Yeah.
Great. Well, one question we want to ask every person who comes on the podcast is, if you could go back to the beginning of your career and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it would be to stick true to your mission and your values, and the clients will come. So I'm in a consulting business, and we rely on clients to keep our doors open. But I think we have found over time that if we stick to the healthcare arena, the patient advocate groups that we know and that fuel us and are important to us, we are better at our jobs because we're excited about it and we want to dig into the details, and the clients come naturally. So we try not to stress too much year over year about the clients coming in the door. We try to focus our energy and our efforts on digging in deep and becoming subject matter experts, and then the clients come.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing everything about your job with us, Abby. It was super interesting and it was great to have you.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Businesswomen Talking. We will link all three of our contact information to this episode and a link to McCall Hamilton as well. If you would like to be a speaker or interviewee on our podcast, please reach out to us at info@fosterswift.com. We would love to hear about your story, the work that you're doing, and how you got where you're at.
Yeah, if you would like to not only see this episode, but our previous episodes, you can find all things Businesswomen Talking on our YouTube channel, where our episodes are linked, or on our firm's landing page. If you Google Foster Swift and Businesswomen Talking, you'll find our previous episodes as well as resources we find may be important to women entrepreneurs. So please reach out, and we'd love to hear your story as well. And thank you, Abby, for sharing yours.
Of course. Thanks so
thank
much
you,
for
Abby.
having me.
We'll see you next time on Businesswomen Talking.